you're in the right place. This is the Eatfluencer Podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Maggie Landis. Together, we are going to unpack everything about eating and discover the what, when, and how that will let you lead your best life. This is not your doctor's conversation about nutrition. Today is when you can start to love eating again. Let food be food and you be you. Get ready to get eatfluenced. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Eatfluencer Podcast. I'm Maggie Landis, your host here, and this is episode 77. We're talking about body image with Molly Seifert today, and I'm going to give Molly a proper introduction before I get into the content. But I gotta be honest with you about something. We're in the second season of this podcast. The first season, I didn't realize I was going to do seasons. I guess I was deluded with the idea that I was going to just record one podcast a week for all of perpetuity. And that, as you can imagine, led to really a lot of stress and ultimately kind of burnout with the production because I'm doing this all myself. I don't have a team that helps with podcasting. I don't actually have a team that helps with anything, but that's beside the point. So that first season was 60 or 61 episodes, I think. I don't know. It's hard to even call it a season, but I had to give it a name because I needed to take a break and it needed to stop. So then we came back for season 2 and I was like totally 1,000,000% more organized. I had interviews recorded ahead of time. I had all the layout for which dates everything was going to be released, when the solo episodes were coming out. And then, you know what? I have decided I needed to do a little course correction here, and we're about 3/4 of the way through what I anticipated being season 2, but I am already brainstorming some really innovative ideas and a little bit of a tiny sidestep for season 3. And meanwhile, I have these great guest interview episodes that I have recorded over the last couple of months, and I'll be honest, I am the kid that shook the Christmas presents under the Christmas tree because patience is not known to be one of my best qualities. And so I want to get you these guest episodes sooner. I had them sort of smattered through the summer. That was my plan, with some solo casts in between. But to be honest, this content is so good and you guys are going to benefit so much from this. I want to get this into your hands quicker. And then I want to move in this new direction that I am taking this podcast, which I will reveal details of in upcoming weeks. But I just want you to know that's happening. If you're enjoying this now, you are going to double down on your enjoyment with season 3. I'm not changing the content, but I'm changing the format a little bit that I think is going to be welcomed and also bring more energy to me on the production aspect. And I'm just really, really excited about those changes that are going to be coming towards the end of the summer. But today we're talking with Molly Seifert, and she is, let me give you a proper introduction here. I wanted to bring her on here because she's an expert in body image. And besides I would say my top question that people ask me is, what do I do when my doctor says lose weight? What do I do when my doctor says get on the scale? What do I do when my doctor tells me that I can't do such and such until I lose however many pounds? Those are absolutely the top questions I get, for good reason. That's very much my wheelhouse. But the next set of questions that I get a lot of is about body image, because especially women, I don't think we're so much struggling with nutrition. We're struggling with our body image. And if you think that doctors get very little training in nutrition, you better believe they get about 0 in body image mentoring, coaching, sort of assessment. I'm not even sure that word is brought up in the academic disciplines at all, which is really unfortunate because it is an obstacle for many of our clients and patients as we are providing health services. And so we need our colleagues like Molly, who you're going to hear from today, to help support us in this work, because this is a very pervasive problem. And I think you're going to really enjoy our conversation today. It's about setting boundaries. It's about what is body image. It's about how do we heal an injured body image? What are the steps we can take to reconnect with ourselves? And Molly is just enthusiastic and really a expert at this content, and so much fun to listen to and talk to, and I hope you enjoy this. Let's give you Molly's real brief intro here, and then we'll get to the interview. Molly Seifert is a body image coach and mentor who works with women that have decided to ditch dieting but now feel uncomfortable in their bodies. The women she works with value authenticity, but they feel held back from being fully themselves because of their body image. Molly helps them reconnect with their body so they can be unapologetically themselves, share their gifts to the world, and live their life authentically. She also works with professionals who are struggling to support their clients through body image barriers and equips them with the tools that fit them in their practice best so their clients can thrive. All right, no more ado. Let's get to the interview with Molly Seifert. All right. Well, I have Molly here with us this morning. Molly, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Oh my gosh. We recorded for your podcast, and I don't know what order these are being released, so this may come after or before yours with mine, but I knew we could talk for hours and hours. So
yes,
we won't
totally
talk for hours and hours today. However, don't worry, listeners.
I'm trying to keep it succinct.
Yeah, I know, but you'll come back for more for sure, because you have so much wisdom as a body image coach and mentor. And truthfully, that is where I think so many women are stuck. Like we hear about, okay, letting go of diet practices and neutralizing food behavior and stuff, but the feelings we have about our body are like holding us back. So I'm curious how you got into this work, if you're willing to share a little bit of your story, because this is not like the kind of thing that you put on a college application, like, I'm going to grow up and be a body image coach. Especially not when you're drinking Slim Fast in 1990 or whatever I was doing. So I'm curious about how you got into this work, Molly.
Yeah, absolutely. So like so many people in this space, it really comes from my own story and struggle around this. So my story actually started with just digestive issues, and like so many people, I wanted to feel better, and that's so valid, right? So I got this diagnosis of IBS and was prescribed an antispasmodic, and it helped the symptoms, but then I got other symptoms. I had headaches and I had trouble sleeping, and I was like, all right, I'm not going to take this medication for the rest of my life. Let's try to figure this out through food. And I had a boss at the time who it wasn't a toxic suggestion. It was like, oh, why don't you try removing gluten? Because she had celiac disease, and she, had found a lot of relief from that, and had heard of other people finding digestive relief from removing gluten. So I removed
It's
gluten.
Also like on the headline of every health magazine that's been published in the last 20 years too. So that, I can see why you thought it was a reasonable idea, right?
Totally. Yeah. And this was like before it became super popular, but it was starting to kind of creep into the media a little bit. So I gave up gluten. I did feel a little bit better, but not 100%, because that wasn't really the issue. And then I gave up dairy and felt a little bit better, but not all the way, because again, that wasn't really the issue. And so I got into this habit of just removing things from my diet. And before that, I had a pretty normal relationship to food. I didn't really think about it much. I ate a balanced diet. Like I was very lucky that like I had an upbringing in which I didn't think about it too much. My mom dieted, did those things, but it never felt super toxic in my mind. It didn't really affect me too much until then. And I started to kind of snowball into this habit of removal from my diet. And then I went to grad school, And I had a true quarter life crisis in grad school. I am a longtime perfectionist, overachiever. And so my entire life was kind of a performance. I was trying to build up this facade of perfection and beauty. And this is my amazing, perfect life, right?
Right.
And halfway through grad school, that was all crumbling. I was having some family issues with my parents. I had built this career in sports medicine that I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Oh, what do I do now?
Yeah.
I was in a relationship with this guy who we had talked about marriage, and he basically was just like, you know what, this isn't the right fit for me. I'm out. Just like no communication, just like peace out, bye. So everything that I had built, this picture perfect life, was crumbling around me. And at the time, I mean, it's so clear now, but it was a little bit sneakier at the time. I was like, you know what, if I could just lose a couple pounds, I would just feel so much better. And
oh yeah, that's always the answer, right?
That is the
Fixes
answer
everything
to a quarter life crisis, obviously. And at the time, I was in a much smaller body than I am in now, because I had been in a habit of removing so many things. And not to mention, I was working as an athletic trainer. So I was on my feet a ton. I was riding my bike to work. I was running half marathons. So my energy expenditure was huge. And so now I'm trying to restrict calories to lose some weight. And I quickly fell into a restrict binge cycle, because I was just not giving my body enough energy. And at night, my body was like, yo, sister,
crashing,
some more food. Like, and then I was binging. Then I would feel crappy about myself. And then I'd wake up the next morning and be like, all right, today's the day. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be really good, blah, blah, blah.
Double down every morning. Yeah.
Right. Every day was a new day and I could do this. Right. And I just started to get so frustrated that I couldn't get to this quote unquote goal weight. Right. And luckily I had a friend who I was sharing this with, and she had to tell, it took a couple times where she was like, hey, Molly, this is like really bordering on eating disorder, body dysmorphia. Like this sounds actually pretty dangerous. And looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, Molly, that was so insensitive, because she had an eating disorder. And here I am talking to her about weight loss. And now I look back and I'm just like, oh, but thank God she was just kind and recovered, and like it wasn't triggering to her, and she created some awareness around that. But I remember the moment where it all clicked, and I was like, oh my God, I am eating in a disordered way. If I don't already have an eating disorder, I am really close. I am bordering, I'm going in that direction. And I knew in that moment that I had to give myself permission to eat food. I had no idea what intuitive eating was. It just felt intuitive that I was like, I got to give myself permission to eat. So I did that. And there was an element that felt better, but I gained weight. And so at one point I was like, oh no, this can't be the answer.
Right.
So then I was like, all right, well, I can't restrict calories. I can't count calories because that's going to be triggering. Let me just eat super healthy. And so then I fell into a pattern.
I'm going to give up binge eating disorder for orthorexia.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And so I fell into that. And at the time, orthorexia wasn't in, the ICD or whatever it's called. Or,
right. I just still don't even think it is. It's but it's at least a more commonly used term than it was.
And at that time it was not. And so I thought it was just me being healthy, and then it became a part of my identity. And so the orthorexic patterns were even more pervasive. They lasted longer because I started to become the healthy one and the wellness one and the one that everybody came to get, health advice. And so interestingly, I got my health coaching certification with the intention of teaching people how to be healthy like me.
Right. You know what? But no shame in that, because there are so many people who go into these fields of nutrition or dietetics or personal training or whatever because of their own disordered belief system that I can fix myself. So now I want to get paid to fix everybody else.
Yep, exactly. And I was not fixed. But the good part was that it didn't take very long. It was only a couple clients in before I learned about intuitive eating, and it all just clicked for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is not only what I need for myself, but what I need to teach other people. So I dove headfirst into intuitive eating for myself. Then once I felt like I had my footing with it, started coaching intuitive eating. And then what I found was I love intuitive eating and I love coaching intuitive eating. It's such a fun topic, but what I found was what I was really coaching women on was body image and self-worth. Because what I
Yeah.
find is food is kind of like that top layer. And then when you peel that back, you're like, oh, wow, I see a bunch of stuff down here. And it's all about my body and how I feel about myself. So a couple of years ago, I shifted to coaching on exclusively body image and self-worth. And now I'm here.
Yeah, I feel like the food, as you mentioned, it is sort of like a proxy for these like really deeper feelings.
Yeah. Yep.
And people will start working on the food issues, and then the body image stuff is really a major sticking point. And then they keep going back to the food. Like if I fix the food more, if I, kind of try, it's all that control thing about, but really this is messy work, this body image work. It's messy work.
It is. Yeah.
So let's start with this, because I want to know what is sort of the entry point, because a lot of women, they are very shamed about their bodies. They may even hate their bodies. They certainly don't like their bodies. Maybe they do or don't even respect their bodies. And so, we see all this stuff about love yourself, hashtag love, whatever, body positivity, all this toxic stuff is so out of reach. Like that's just not even tangible. So I know that you have a sort of system to think through this or work through this. Where's the the bottom layer entry point for somebody who's listening to this today?
Tell me more what you mean by entry
what
point.
What are the thoughts? What's the sort of thought transformation between getting up, putting on your clothes, standing in front of the mirror, being disgusted with yourself, thinking that the only solution is to go on a diet and shrink? Like what, I know there's, this takes a lot of work. This is not something you work through in 5 minutes, but what's that first thing to change about your mind?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first step is really creating awareness around this is something that you want to change, because you can't shift something unless you see that it's a problem for you individually, right? And that's about how it feels in your body. So if you are noticing, okay, I've healed my relationship to food, or I'm really drawn to healing my relationship to food, and then you're like, oh no, but my body's going to change and there's no way. But then you're also like, wait, no, that's not actually correct. I know I should be able to love and accept my body as it is and live my life to its fullest extent in any body. So if you have that kind of like inner dialogue that's like, oh no, I can't gain weight, but then you also have that voice that's like, but is that true? And you're like, okay, that feels like something that feels authentic to me, but how do I get there? How do I actually get to that place where I can live my life to its fullest extent in any size body? That sounds really nice and authentic and aligned, but like, how do I get there? So I think the first step is really awareness and seeing like, oh, I see this contrast in like the things I'm believing and have been led to believe and the things that are actually true to me.
Yeah. And I know on the podcast, nobody can see our hand talking. You and I are both like hand talkers.
Yeah.
So you're not seeing all the hand talking, but like, to me, what I'm visualizing in my head as you're talking is this sort of like being able to pull back a little bit and get a little more objective kind of bird's eye view of your belief system, and not judging your own beliefs, because that's a place we get to a lot also, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we can notice these mean thoughts about ourselves, and then we're thinking mean thoughts about the mean thoughts. It's just like this snowball effect of like self-hate, really. And that keeps us exactly where we're at. Being critical about your critical thoughts is not going to get you anywhere. We have to be curious about those critical thoughts and also see how those critical thoughts at one point, they were created to keep you safe, right? All of these thought processes, these belief systems were literally created to keep you safe. Our brains and our bodies are so smart. So it serves you at one point, but that discomfort that you feel, that entry point that you're talking about, is noticing that like these belief systems are no longer serving me. They're actually holding me back now.
Right. And they weren't necessarily yours to start with, like, because a lot of, let's talk about that for a second, because this diet culture culture, is to subscribe to somebody else's values and somebody else's idea of what's right. And so that's a major shift in thinking to kind of reroute that autonomy. So what's, in terms of going from an external system of validation to an internal validation, where does that, is this reconnecting? Like, what you use the term in your content a lot, reconnecting with yourself. And I'm not exactly sure honestly what that means, but it sounds real good.
Like, it sounds nice, but what does that mean?
Sounds like it might help.
Yeah. So I definitely believe that, like you said, diet culture is a system of beliefs that we also now know to be oppressive, but a system of beliefs that are somebody else's, not actually ours, right? Where do they come from? There's many different theories, right? But they're very Eurocentric, thin ideals, right? That don't apply to everyone, right? And it's not that like some people don't fit into that and they can be perfectly happy and whatever, right? That's valid too. But the truth is that those are not your values, right? So inherently, when we subscribe to diet culture, and here I am using my hands again, if you're over here, right, now you are walking away from yourself and your ideals and values and walking towards diet culture. And so we lose sight of ourselves. We feel disconnected from ourselves. It doesn't mean we lose ourselves. It's always here within us, right? But we literally have to walk away from our own values and walk towards diet culture's values. And that feels really uncomfortable in our bodies. And I think that's part of, there's many reasons why diet culture feels so uncomfortable and so unfulfilling, is because you've literally walked away from your values. And so I love this simple exercise because I do it with all of my clients. And it's like the simplest questions, but why didn't we do these in high school or college? What are your values? Let's look at a values list. And I want you to identify what's important to you. I can almost guarantee you that thinness is not going to be in your top 10.
Right. You know what's crazy about you saying that, just as a side note, and then I don't want to interrupt you. I'll let you finish, but I had never really like delineated my own personal values until I worked with a friend of mine who's getting a life coach certification. And about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, she needed like a test subject or whatever. And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll do your program. Whatever. And, I mean, she made me, just like it sounds like you are, like really pen to paper, really thinking like, this is your core values, not like things you're interested in today. This is like your entire reality is built off of these values. And so I can't like underemphasize or overemphasize. I can't overemphasize what you're saying right now and how that will transform everything. Frankly, it transforms your relationships, your job performance, your parenting, everything else, but it transforms this practice too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when I did this work, what I noticed, especially looking back, because I had done a lot of healing work before I did the values work, is one of my biggest values is authenticity. So making sure I am being myself. But then I looked back on my life and I literally was creating my life as a performance. It was not, there was bits of authenticity because we sometimes can't avoid that, right? But I had created this facade and it was not authentic. So then what I had to do is what you do is you look at a list of values, you choose the ones that feel authentic to you, or there I am using authentic again. Choose the ones that feel true.
Look at you,
right? Look at me aligning with my values. Choose the ones that feel true to you. And then I challenge people to choose just 2 or 3 top ones, because then what you can do throughout the day is self-check and say, am I choosing authenticity here? Or am I choosing something else? Am I choosing courage here? Or am I choosing something else? And a big one for me is also connection. Am I choosing connection in this relationship and communication? Or am I choosing to avoid or not connect here? Right.
Yeah.
And so then you can self-check and sometimes aligning with those things, there's an element of discomfort because it's new and unfamiliar, but in a way it's what you've always wanted and needed. So there's this just draw to align with those things. And so choosing and identifying your values is a great way to reconnect with yourself. And it's low intensity, right? There's other ways to reconnect with our bodies that can feel pretty scary, but choosing your values and starting to do little things to align with them is so powerful. So the things I have people do is choose their top 3, then define that word for you. So for me, like, what does authenticity mean to me, right? Write that down. And then the second question would be, how are you already aligning with this value? Because I want to create some wins here, right? Like,
right. Let's get our fingernails into something here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I already do this. And so then the first step is really not to change anything, but notice how you're aligning with that more and more, because you probably already are. And then the third question would be, how can I align even deeper with this value? So that would be like the easiest thing for you to take away, like after this podcast or tonight or tomorrow, right? Do this work, look up a values list, choose your top 2 or 3 and answer those 3 questions.
Right. And do it like from your gut. I mean, that's the important part, is don't, like, you're going to look at this list of 100 words and be like, oh, I want to be honest and I want to be approachable and I want to be you know, whatever. No, it's not what you, even if those things are all good and you might have some of those qualities, it's like, what is your like magnetic north, like unwavering, will not compromise on this ever, you know? And that's so interesting. Because it's really helpful to feel like your actions are congruent. I like the word congruent, you know, with your thinking. And we spend so much time in this diet culture space where there's this cognitive dissonance is the nerd word, but you know, really this like conflict in our mind where we know, like, you knew when you were the trainer and restricting all the calories, that like you knew that wasn't serving your body. I mean, you weren't stupid, like, you know that eating 700 calories a day and working out is not a great idea, but you kind of ignored that. And I'm just using you as the example because we're talking, but like, and all of us have examples where we just ignored what we knew really felt wrong because we're subscribing to this external plan, somebody else's deal. So that's awesome. Now, how about setting boundaries? Because a lot of this body stuff, you know, there's talk, everybody's talking, all the girlfriends are all trying this and trying that, and there's it's just normative for women to feel like their body and their body image is like public information. So you have to set some boundaries, and I like you've spoken before about kind of thinking about boundaries internally and externally, and I'm curious if you could, you know, elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when people hear boundaries, they're like, they put up a boundary against boundaries.
Yeah,
like, no,
that's right.
I can't do that, obviously. But I think it's because people think of boundaries as confrontational and about building a wall and about saying, no, you're not allowed to do that. And we're so worried about how other people are going to react that it feels really scary. And let's be real, setting external boundaries can be challenging and you don't know how people are going to react. So I want to validate that there's some truth.
Right.
So the way that I love for people to start with boundaries is actually our internal boundaries. So external boundaries are setting external, you know, rules and regulations about this is where I end and where you begin. Like here's the wall, here's the door as well, but like I get to choose who comes in and out. Right.
Right.
So internal boundaries are really managing our internal world, because guess what? We don't live alone. We live in a world with other people and things and systems. And so the external world is going to impact how we feel internally. And so an example of this might be like you're talking about, you're, you know, having cocktails with your girlfriends and the conversation moves to all the diets that they're on and how they're trying to lose weight. And then your thinking goes, oh no, Susie's on keto. Should I be doing keto? Oh man, I'm such a bad person because I'm not trying to lose weight right now. Did I really choose the right thing? Oh man, maybe I should really switch what I'm doing. right? So
right. Except for all that happens in about 1 nanosecond.
exactly.
And is on replay over and over. Yeah.
Yes. And then it continues, it just spirals down, right? It puts you into a shame spiral. And so internal boundaries is really noticing and getting curious about those thought patterns and choosing ones that are, again, are more aligned with your values. That's why I think this values work is so important, right? And then getting curious and noticing the thoughts. So internal boundaries might sound more like, oh, I'm noticing that I feel really uncomfortable that Susie is talking about her keto diet. I don't feel ready yet to tell her to stop. So I'm going to be with myself while I feel this discomfort. I'm noticing this desire to want to tell myself that I'm wrong for not dieting. But the truth is, I know that healing my relationship to food and body is what's right for me right now.
Right. That's going to align with your authentic values, your core values.
Yes, exactly. So that's kind of what internal boundaries sound like. It's curiosity, it's noticing, it's holding space for the discomfort. So it's really choosing thoughts that are more aligned with you. But the key to choosing thoughts that are more aligned with you are also meeting yourself where you're at. I don't want you to say, oh, I'm noticing I'm uncomfortable that Susie's talking about her keto diet, and just try to choose a thought that's like, I love myself and my body and I feel great.
Yeah. Cause that's like it's like jumping over the Grand Canyon. There's no, just too far, you know?
Yes. So if you're having a hard time, acknowledge that, validate that, right? Say, I'm having a hard time right now. I'm noticing that this is really hard for me, and that's okay. So internal boundaries are really meeting yourself where you're at, noticing the thoughts that are coming up, and then choosing ones that align closer to your values, but also acknowledge and hold space for where you're at now.
Yeah, that's well, and people kind of gloss over that piece of really sitting with the negative, uncomfortable, confusing emotions. But this is one of those things that the only way through is through. Like there's really no shortcut, because when you try to put, band-aids on this and sort of, people have asked me before, they're like, well, maybe if I just distract myself. And I'm like, well, see, that's only a really temporary solution, and you're going to be right back in the same place. So you have to process this emotion. And I'm not, and I'm the least like woo-woo kind of person, but you really do, because this emotional state, not only does it keep your thinking all chaotic and crazy, it's really affects your body, your physiology, and your physical body.
Absolutely.
And that's part of what's keeping you stuck. So the mind work is not just like a feel good, like, thing to do on Instagram. It's like really, that's really where the work is.
Yeah. And when you were talking right at the beginning, you were saying something, and I was just like, well, yeah, because manipulating our bodies is easier than noticing our feelings. And so our body is a scapegoat often, and we put all of this stuff, we're like, okay, well, let me just distract myself with dieting. Let me just try to fix, quote unquote, myself with dieting. It's because it is uncomfortable to be with those emotions. And I think a lot of people also have a lot of trauma and a lot of invalidation around emotions and feelings. And so no wonder we don't want to go there. So my first suggestion to people that have not done any emotional work and they haven't sat with their emotions, or they're like, I mean, I feel these ways all the time. Isn't this like me feeling my feelings? Like, not actually, but so the first thing, and I've always used the feelings wheel, but after reading Brene Brown's most recent book, Atlas of the Heart, she talks about having a language and a dialogue for your feelings. And I was like, oh, duh. Like, it is so powerful and healing to be like, oh, I'm actually feeling despair right now, instead of being like, I don't know what I feel, but I feel terrible. Right. So my first suggestion to people who have not done any of this like emotional healing work is get yourself a feelings wheel and start to see the language around your emotions, because I found it so validating to be like, oh my gosh, these are words that I never thought to describe my emotions, but they are on point. And secondly, everybody must be experiencing these emotions if somebody made this beautiful color blocked ombre feelings wheel with all of these words, right? Like I obviously am not the only one feeling these ways. So it was so validating. So get yourself a feeling wheel, and so that you can start putting language to your emotions. And then the second easy step, and these are all things that you can start now. If you're noticing you've got big feelings, go to therapy. I am a big fan of therapy.
Oh yeah.
And I think it is incredibly important for everyone, but these are things that you can start now. But if you're noticing, wow, there's some big feelings here, you definitely, I would suggest that you go reach out to a therapist and find someone local to you. But anyways, put language to your feelings. And secondly, call them out when you feel them and validate them. That would sound like, I'm noticing a lot of sadness come up right now. It's okay for me to feel that. That's all you have to do to start.
Right. They all coexist. I don't know if you've seen the Pixar Inside Out movie where all the feelings in the girl's head are like actual people, but that's really, that's a kid's movie, but the idea is real that if you give these things a name, it's almost like giving a person a name, that it's like a different person. Like it's not like that is my guilt, or that is my anxiety, or that is my frustration, or whatever the word is. It's like kind of pulls it away from you, and you can sit right next to it. And you do need to sit next to it. And sometimes you're like sitting on its lap, but it's not, it doesn't define you.
Yes. I think that's an important point to both, not personalize those things, but also recognize it's a part of me. It is not me. I think when I first learned that suggestion, because I really struggled deeply with anxiety. I'm so much better now thanks to therapy, but it still comes up, and I use so many tools. But when I had first started doing, I was like, oh, there's anxiety Annie, right? And what I would do with anxiety Annie is I would reject her. I would put her in the corner. I would be like, you're not here today, right?
Yeah.
And then when I went to therapy, my therapist was like, actually, you need to like hold space for Annie. You need to sit with her. You need to get to know her. You need to hear, see, and understand her. And once I started practicing that, that's when she started to quiet down. Because if you ignore people, what do? They get louder. Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is any mother. I got a lot of mothers on this podcast. If you, the tantruming 3-year-old, like the worst thing you can do is, just like give them the cold shoulder because it's like, that's just like fuel for the fire. Right.
Yeah.
So
and if you don't have time or energy or capacity in that moment to cope with it, it's like, I hear you, I see you, I'm going to come back to you later. Don't give the cold shoulder, like you said.
Right.
Validate and hear it, that like, hey, I hear you, but like, we don't have time right now. Because that's valid too, right? Like if I was in the middle of this podcast recording and all of a sudden I get this wave of sadness, I don't want to. I mean, it would be fine if I did, right? But like, I don't want to.
It'd be like kind of awkward. Yeah, a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So like, I could be like, okay, I'm noticing my sadness. I'm going to come back to you later, and make sure you do that. That's another way to connect to yourself. Follow through on those promises to those parts of yours.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love this. We could talk about this all day long. Well, listen, so if my listeners want to hear more from you, because obviously you have got some great thoughts about just making this practical, because I think the body image healing, that's kind of like a trending thing, and it's way more tactical than that, and you've got a lot of resources. So where can people find you and your content?
Yeah, absolutely. So I hang out the most on Instagram, but I'm trying to shift that a little bit. So you can hop on my email list. If you come on Instagram, there will always be a link to get onto my email list. And with that email list, I have you sign up for a free mini series. And so in that mini series, I walk through the 3 biggest things I hear from people, and like kind of coach you through that in 3 videos that you'll get in your inbox. So you get a little gift for being on my email list. But I, like you mentioned, I also am, growing my podcast. It's called What She Gained. So start at Instagram. That's kind of my main hub. You can find me there at Molly Kate Wellness, and then get on my email list, follow my podcast, and listen there. And those are probably the 3 biggest ways to hear from me.
Fabulous. I will put all those links in the show notes so you guys can access that. And thank you, Molly, for coming on and giving me your time this morning and giving everybody all this great knowledge. It's
absolutely,
but women just need to hear this. Like they need to I think the level of relief knowing that everybody is kind of like got these same thoughts, and there's space for healing if you wish to do that.
Yeah, there's absolutely space. It's available to you. And also meet yourself where you're at. Like, don't put your pressure on yourself to look in the mirror and love every part of you, because that is unrealistic and probably doesn't happen to most people, including myself. Right. So
I think it can set you back. Even it can even set you back, because now you've set this expectation that you're supposed to, and we're done with the supposed tos. That's like what we've done. No more supposed to, except for you're supposed to go to Molly's Instagram and sign up for her email. That you're supposed to do. Right. Well, thank you again for coming.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
She's great. I know you loved it, and I'm not at all surprised. I think she has so much to offer for such a common problem that I would say almost all of us deal with, is body image. So please go over to Molly Kate Wellness on Instagram. Give her some love. Look at her page. She also has her podcast called What She Gained, and you'll want to listen to that wherever you listen to your podcasts. Go ahead and drop us a rating and review while you're at it. Give us a 5-star rating and tell us what you like about this podcast. That helps it get into the ears of more listeners that need this really crucial, transformative information. So I appreciate you being here today, and we'll talk next Wednesday. Until then, thank you so much for being here today. If you love what you've learned, follow me on social media at Maggie Landis MD, and you'll never miss a thing. You can also check out my website at maggielandismd.com and sign up to be part of our community of eaters. Thanks again for stopping by. We'll talk again soon.